Hello and welcome to the Psychic Stories podcast, encouraging conversations about mental health. Today I'm speaking to Roman Mironov. Roman is a relationship coach helping his clients keep and find love in their life, bring passion and joy into their relationships again, save their relationships from falling apart, and recover from a breakup to move on better than before. Roman, hello.
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, and I am excited about discussing some of the things from my background and helping people with tips that I came up with as a result of those experiences.
That sounds perfect to us. And I hear you're in day one of the Canadian lockdown. We are in day God knows what in the British lockdown. So I wish you well in your lockdown over there.
Thank you so much. I will need that.
I think we all will. So the goal today is to have an open and honest conversation about your mental health journey, to get some insight into the tools and techniques that have helped you and are available and accessible to other people. And by discussing your journey, we hope to share and normalize conversations about mental health, as often people are not alone in these experiences. So I would love to ask about your mental health journey. Where did it all begin for you?
Okay, I think I should tell you about my divorce, which was quite a painful breakup.
Yeah.
So what happened in 2013, almost 7 years ago, my wife filed for a divorce and we got it. And you see, I was not prepared for that at all because I was a workaholic and I focused on my work. And that was actually a reason for the breakup, because my wife was not happy about me not being present in the relationship 100%. I was not just able to give her the presence because my headspace was all about my work.
Yeah.
And I did not really have any relationship skills. So I treated her as if she were a man, and that just led to nowhere. So basically, that's how I ended up alone, whereas I really, really thought that this would be my only marriage. This would be my only family for my entire life. So that was quite a shock.
And during that time, that must have been quite a shock, because I assume at the time you were busy working, and suddenly this got presented, to you. Is, on reflection, is that something that, did you go through a process where you try to communicate better, or was it literally out of the blue?
No, it wasn't out of the blue. I just did not expect that the consequence would be so, difficult.
Yeah.
I never thought that she would leave me, because I actually, my another problem that I had was that I wasn't being able to accept her as she was. So I tried to change her all the time. I criticized her a lot. I wanted her to be someone else all the time. And so we had conversations about this. But then it's like when she said, so I had enough. So she quickly filed for divorce, and in a month we got it. And that's it. It was so quick and pretty much unexpected.
And that at that time for you must have hit you like a sledgehammer.
Exactly. I think for 2 weeks after that, I just wasn't myself, and I was really suffering.
I mean, that must have been a very hard time. And so from that point, did you get to take a good look at your behavior and your life, and perhaps reflect on the type of person or the relationship that you wanted to be in, or the type of person you were within a relationship?
Yeah, of course. I took a few weeks to actually grieve and to recover. And during that time, I was just barely existing. And after that time, let's say a month, I started to think about my future. I started, of course, thinking about the mistakes that I made in my previous marriage. And I started slowly to build that future that I wanted. So I got myself back into the dating world very, very slowly. And I started to learn. That actually was the beginning of my future career as a relationship coach.
Do you think in hindsight, because you mentioned, and please forgive me for asking, but you said that it took you a few weeks to grieve, and from my assumption, when you're in a marriage or relationship, that process might take longer. But do you think in hindsight that, like you said, like it took only a couple of weeks because perhaps you were in the wrong relationship?
I know what you mean. And see, let's say in 2008, I got myself into mild depression, and I suffered with that depression for 2.5 years. So when I got divorced, I did not want that again. You see, it was easy for me to slip back into depression, but I didn't want to do that, right?
Right.
So what I did, I said, okay, instead of focusing on what I don't want, which was exactly what I had done in my depression 4 years ago, I focused on what I wanted. I focused on my future. So and this is something that I teach my clients like right away, because the law, I do believe in the law of attraction. So whatever we think about, we attract more of it in our life. So if you think about your loss, if you're grieving for a long time, you just keep these thoughts looping in your head all the time, and that's it. But if you focus on what you want, everything changes. You change your entire direction, because you set the law of attraction to work in you, and you also set your thoughts like in a more positive way. You start taking action.
And that's fascinating. So to say that the situation that you'd found yourself, let's say a few years before, with 2 years of a depression, actually, the fear of slipping back into that made you in some respects very proactive to say, right, this is over, the line is drawn, I will allow myself to struggle for a period of time, but I'm going to move on, and I'm going to move on fast, because I do not want to go back into depression. And I think kind of a follow-on question is, if you don't mind me asking, is like, that period of depression, was that's 2 years of depression? That sounds like a really tough time for you. What was that like?
Well, the reason was actually, looking back, was not that significant, but I was too young and I was a perfectionist back then. So yeah, actually my dog died, and I loved it so much, and that was the reason for depression.
And that tipped you into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the reason why it was so long and pretty much difficult, because I was a perfectionist. So I expected things to be perfect. And when my dog died, that like disrupted my model of the world totally. And I felt so angry, and I felt that I don't fit into that world anymore. I just, I was thinking about how I didn't want it. For this 2.5 years, I woke up every day thinking about how I don't really want this, like the current situation that I'm in. I want to go back and correct the mistakes that I did with the dog. See, I was blaming myself for losing the dog. So I was just, I could not accept the reality. That was why.
And like you said, that might have been, or for others listening, that might be insignificant, a pet passing, but to you, that, I'm not I don't own a pet. However, I do have friends with pets, and the relationship between a dog and yourself is, can be extremely strong. So in some respects, like you said, like that was, I assume that was the most, at the time, perhaps the most trusting, dependable, loving relationship that you had. And then when that dog sadly passed, then there's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. It's not necessarily about the dog. Like you said, it upends your reality. The fact that things change, you can't go back and fix the past. It's impossible. And moving forward, it can be very difficult.
Exactly. And I just for this 2.5 years, I did not allow myself to feel happy, because every time my mind would tell me, oh, it's all right. I can't be happy right now because, well, there is some stimulation going on, maybe some success that I got, but I could not allow myself to feel that. And actually, the reason why that loss was so bad for me, it felt so bad, was the fact that I was living with my future wife at that point, and I love the dog, just like I associated my love with my love of my girlfriend, my future wife, with that dog, because it was actually her dog. So I associated a lot of great emotions with it, and I just loved it, just like similar to how I loved her. You know.
It's the way the feelings, emotionals, the mind itself is so complicated, and especially relationships, you know, it's very difficult, especially when you're in them, when you're in love, it's very difficult to understand what's going on. And like you said, you're out of that now. You could start to look back and say, okay, actually, like you said, the relationship with the dog was tied up with the relationship with your future wife, which is a very, very hugely powerful emotions. How did you then get to feeling more positive?
Well, if we go back to depression, the best thing that helped me, so basically I took 2 steps. The first one was this is when I discovered self-help materials at that point. So motivational speakers like Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, and so on. A lot of great, like Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie. So I immersed myself into that, and that was such a breakthrough, because I didn't realize that this kind of help materials existed. And I just kept listening to it every day. I'm a very audible person. I prefer to get information by audio. So I kept bombarding my mind with that information, and slowly, very, very slowly, I was changing from negative, just going from negative to positive with those small steps. And you see, I'm blessed to have this ability to develop momentum. So I take a small step, and then when I've completed, I am prepared to go to the next step, which is a little bit bigger. And I develop momentum very quickly, and it's easier for me to keep going. I mean, it might sound weird to other people, but for me, really, I like to be consistent. Yeah, but those also, 2 things what happen.
But also with that momentum as well, you can kind of get the imagery yourself as you're going through it, that you're moving away from that past. So like you said, building that momentum, you're building that speed, you're building that velocity away from whatever has gone on, and what you're doing is you're filling those gaps. So there's now not just a memory of something really bad that's happened and that's it. There's a lot of other positive steps in between, and those small steps, like you say, might be as simple as getting up in the morning and going for a walk, but finding those little elements of positivity can act as a barrier between that negative past and start to really build your confidence. And with confidence comes momentum.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I'm saying. So like I would get up in the morning, take a walk, and from that walk, I would build a better day. So I would take another action, then another action. And that's how you get out of depression. You start by, let's say, if you're so depressed that you don't want to get out of your bed, like the first step could be just, get up, go to the window, and find something that's beautiful. Just maybe a beautiful tree, and enjoy it for a few seconds, and then you can go back to bed. Something as simple as that.
Yeah, and when you're back in bed, give yourself a break and congratulate yourself that you did that. Because that small step, when we are not feeling depressed and we're feeling top of the world, that's the easiest thing in the world to do. But it's really, really hard when you are feeling that low.
Yeah, that is true. That is true, because your entire biochemistry changes, and you don't you don't feel that enjoyment.
Mm. And so tell us how you became, because you're a relationship coach. Tell us that journey. It's interesting that you came from a divorce, a relationship breakup, and became a relationship coach. What was the journey like that? What was the journey of that?
Yeah, so after breaking up and after this grief process, I realized that I needed to get back into the dating world. And at that point, I knew that I did not have any dating or relationship skills. So I started to learn them and practice a lot, really a lot, maybe too much, because I tend to overcommit. So I spent the next 5 to 6 years really building those skills and making myself a guinea pig in this sense.
And it works. It's that experimentation, isn't it? If you've acknowledged, but that must have been very hard, because like you said, if you haven't got the relationship skills, that to me would often speak about the kind of a lack of confidence.
Yeah, lack of confidence was a part of it. I remember when I started to approach women after breaking up, let's say in a couple of months after my divorce. That was so hard. That was so hard. I just, I didn't know what to say. I didn't think it was, I thought it was weird. I thought that, like, I wanted to literally run away. And there was this one time when I came up to 2 women, and I literally, I talked to them for a minute, and then I ran away when one of them turned away.
It's funny. I've had a similar experiences back when I was young. I was very, very bad talking to women, and a friend of mine really helped me. We would go out, and he would say, "Matt, we're playing the 1, 2, 3 game." I was like, "Okay, fine, we'll play the game." And the point of the game is, if I catch someone's eye, and they catch it back, and he sees it, he says 1, 2, 3, and I have to go over and say something. Now, the first time this happened, I caught a girl's eye. She caught it back, smiled. He saw it. He went 1, 2, 3, and I walked over. I got to her. She turned as if to say, "Talk to me," and nothing came out of my mouth.
I know.
I couldn't. So what I did, I turned round and walked off. Back to my friend with my head down low. I couldn't even look back. It was the feeling inside. But then you do realize that what you're thinking about what will happen, that feeling inside you, and I'm sure lots of people can recognize that. You get this hot feeling inside you where you're just lost for words. The easiest antidote to that is just going up and saying, "Hello, how are you?" And once you realize that, because when we have these conversations, it's not, we're not talking to animals. We're talking to fellow human beings. If you say, "Hi, how are you?" most people will go, "Yeah, I'm all right. How are you?"
Yes, exactly. Because that's our ego. Our ego is creating all this, barriers in our head that it doesn't want us to actually take a hit to our self-esteem, and that's where the fear comes from.
So tell us, tell us your experience from that first time you walked up to a woman. What happened?
Yeah, well, I don't remember the first time that with one woman, but I can tell about that, that situation with the 2 women when I ran away. So it was in a grocery store. I came up to them. I actually started talking to them, although I was sweating. I was very, very, very scared. And like 1 minute into the conversation, one of the women actually turned away. And she said, it's like she wanted me to talk to the other one. And the other one also turned to look at her. Right. So they were both not looking at me. And at that point, I felt so uncomfortable already. So I I took the opportunity and ran away.
Yeah.
It was so much easier.
Yeah, I can empathize with you there. But practice makes perfect, right? Especially when you're trying to build those skills.
Absolutely. Practice. Like when I talk to my clients and they say, well, I want more confidence, I tell them nothing beats practice. Confidence comes with practice. Even if it comes to meeting women or men, yeah, you desensitize yourself over time by approaching them and talking to them, actually, and the fear goes away. That's nothing beats that.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head by saying the fear doesn't come from anything external to us. It's within our own heads, and there's a lot of. It's amazing those 4 or 5 steps towards someone random in a bar or a club or a grocery store, whatever it is. The feelings that come to the surface are not about the person in front of you. They're about deep. I feel, I don't like myself. I'm not feeling good today. I'm not worthy. There's a lot of stuff that unpacks very, very quickly and obviously leads to a situation where you can't say anything.
Exactly. And if we dig even deeper, the main reason, I believe the core reason, is that we build a barrier between ourselves and the other person. Whereas I don't think there is any division between ourselves and that other person, because I believe that our universe is just really non-dual. It's one reality, and we're all the same.
And so those 5 to 6 years, you said you spent practicing, improving those skills, and I assume there was a goal in mind, and that was to find yourself in love, in a meaningful relationship that you felt like you were participating and engaging in.
Yes,
and
that's right.
And how did that play out?
It's still in progress, I would say. Yeah, it's still in progress. I had a few great relationships, but I ended up myself because I felt that they were not right for me. And now things are a little bit more difficult because I actually moved from Russia to Canada, and with the lockdown and with this move, it's been, it's hard. I wouldn't say that it's completely hard, but things have been more difficult.
And from your client's perspective as well, because I think this is it's a very difficult time for people who are on their own, and I've got friends who are single who really want to meet someone, and they're saying the last year has been really, really difficult for that.
That's true, and that's why the first tip I give to my clients is go online and take this opportunity to develop your online dating skills, because this is where the world is heading anyway. Right.
And but it's a scary thing. It's almost like preparing for a job interview, isn't it?
Yeah, people don't like dating apps. Most people really hate them. They think they're brutal because it is difficult to find a good person there, because of people say there's so much litter right there. Yeah, so I have to do a lot of reframing there. And explaining.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, just really explaining to people that you should not expect 100% results from, let's say, 100% from all of your communications in a dating app. You really need to think that, let's say, 1%, 2%, or 3% is good, is already good.
Yeah. And how do you, so now having come out of divorce and going through several relationships, I assume you teach and you support people going through those relationships. What do you see as the key ingredients to a good relationship? And firstly, I'd like to ask about romantic relationships, but secondly, I'd like to have ask about friendships, relationships with your family, brothers, sisters, friends, colleagues.
Yeah, it's simple and it's the same. It's love. It's all about giving unconditional love to the other person, whether it's your partner or your friend or your relative. Because you see, most people get it backward. They believe that they go into the relationship to extract love from the other person, to get love from the other person. Yeah, but it's not how it works. It might work in the beginning of the relationship, but then it won't. That's why so many relationships actually fall apart. But when you give love, and you go there to give, to love the other person, to care about them, to affirm them every day, to praise them, to make them feel loved and significant, that's when you feel love in yourself. And that's the key thing. Just think about an infant, like a small guy, really, really small, and you just love, let's say it's a boy, and you just love him. He did not do anything to deserve your love, right? You accept him as he is, and you love him, and you feel that love in your heart, just because you give, like, the caring about him, you give him loads of love. And when you do that, so the first benefit is that you already feel love. The second benefit is that you make the other person happy. And when you see that they're happy, you become happier as well. And finally, usually that person will respond in kind by loving you back.
And if they don't, it's a good sign.
It's a good sign. It's a good sign that the relationship will not work going forward.
So, and you said right at the beginning of that about it's easy, it's unconditional love. Like, that sounds hard to me. So how do you unpack that idea of, because for some people it will be easy, some people it might be difficult. How do you get to I'm not going to say a mindset of unconditional love, but a kind of an emotional state where you're able to do that?
What I actually meant is that the idea is simple itself, but of course the implementation is so hard. It's so hard. And this is how you develop the mindset. So we have this ego that, again, creates that separation between us and the other person. And the process of feeling more love toward people and the world in general is to dissolve that ego, to dissolve that barrier, and realize that I am one with everything. And it's very hard. It's very hard because since our childhood, we have built our identity, and it's difficult to dissolve it. It's difficult to give up those significant parts of it for the other person and just to give more love. So let's say one practical tip is what I do every day when I meditate. I just put both hands on my heart. I breathe in really, really deeply. And then I exhale, and I imagine my love going from my heart to the entire world. So, and when I do that, I imagine as many people, as many loved ones as possible for me, the entire environment, just random strangers like this. So that's what I do. And then, I also recommend practicing unconditional love in the moment. Let's say, even if you, like, let's say you're moving a chair. You can do that in two different ways. You can do it in like a non-caring way, but you can also do it with love. And when you do this to as many times as possible during the day, when you catch yourself thinking about this, it starts to rewire your brain.
So that's really interesting. That feeling of unconditional love can, if you're struggling, you can practice. And
you should. Yes.
I really like what you say about that dissolving your ego. That word dissolve, that's very active, and that's something. I mean, I personally quite like these visualizations where you can start to imagine that. You can imagine that ego in front of you, and I think not even in front of you, surrounding you like a cocoon, which is preventing you from letting the feelings inside you, love, joy, excitement, flow out. And even just by thinking about it and closing your eyes, and like you said, hands on heart, meditate and breathe in, and imagine when you breathe out that starts to break down. and you are physically on your mind dissolving that and enabling you to do that. And yeah, I can see how that's really powerful.
It is. It absolutely is.
But I could also see how it's hard.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's
Yeah.
it's a journey through until you die, really, becoming enlightened in a sense.
And from a so a couple of questions. So from a situation where you've come from divorce, because obviously there's it seems like half the world is divorced, and I've got a lot of friends and who have been through relationship breakups and divorce. It's a very difficult time in people's lives, and it's very common. How do you cope? How can people cope better?
Well, the first tip that I give is to give yourself 1 or 2 days to really grieve. You can stay at home, watch, drama films, beat the pillow, cry, yell, and do that. So release the emotion.
Yeah.
Then get yourself around other people. Don't be alone, because loneliness will exacerbate those feelings and it won't let you get rid of them. So be around other people as helps, because it gets you out of your head.
Yeah, and that's very important, isn't it? And I think it's very relevant in lockdowns where we're always in our heads.
Exactly. And the third main thing to do is to start thinking about the future. Start taking action, even small steps toward finding a new partner. That's difficult, but this is the most important thing. Absolutely the most important.
And I love how you say, just give yourself 2 days. Just 2 days, not a year, not half the length of your relationship, as people say. 2 days to grieve. And then implicit in what you're saying as well is that divorce is final. There's a line there. So grieve and then start the process, and I assume it's a very proactive process to start to move on, and because at the end of the day, if you're getting divorced and you're in your kind of mid late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, the reality is, in the grand scheme of things, there's not a huge amount of time left, so why waste any time, right?
Exactly. A very, very good point, because people, they don't have that perspective, unfortunately. So this is one of the things that I force my clients to do, actually, to really think about the time that's left and the time they might waste grieving too much. And that is so true. That is so true. And actually, this is the perspective I like to discuss when people say, I don't want to, stay with my partner because they don't meet all of my requirements. Let's say they meet 70% of my requirements, of my criteria. And I tell them, okay, so you might lose them. Then you might spend another few years looking for another partner. And you might not even find one. And you might find, like, later, let's say 5 years down the road, you'll have to accept someone who is at 50% of your criteria, because like you don't have much time left and the clock is ticking, actually.
I think a hard question is around, okay, so we've talked about what I assume is divorce in terms of, I would say, a mutual breakup or a breakup that didn't necessarily have anything untoward going on it. I met you can see on your website, you deal with a lot of clients who maybe have gone through periods of infidelity. And there is a lot of infidelity in the world. In that situation, and I'm going from the viewpoint that you are the person who has been the victim of that infidelity, because I do see it in some respects as being a victim, because you certainly didn't have any choice to that person to betray your feelings. How can that person start to move on? Because that's very complicated.
The main thing when it comes to infidelity is stop blaming yourself about what happened. It's not about you, it's about them. It's about that your partner who actually betrayed you.
Yeah.
And why you'd want to do that is you want to make sure that your self-esteem stays intact. Because otherwise, if you start beating yourself up, your self-esteem will take a huge blow.
Yeah.
And it will make things so much more difficult for you. And like a more practical tip is do not go into the details of what happened. Don't ask any questions about why it happened, like what was the reason, the details of how it happened. I know that you want to know that in that point. You want to actually have those details and understand why it happened. But
it's almost sadistic. You want to know what goes on.
Masochistic, yeah.
Yeah, beg your pardon, yes.
Yeah, that's right. But by doing that, by like learning about all those details, you're gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And people oftentimes they become like detectives and they start like looking for like spying on their partner. And that is so bad for self-esteem. So
but
it should be your priority.
It's so hard, isn't it, to say to yourself, it's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's them, it's not my fault, because very quickly you can pick up on reasons why you think it might be your fault, which is, I can see why in that situation being around great friends and family can be very supportive. So in that situation, being alone would be doubly as bad.
Absolutely. And having a mentor or a coach or a friend or a relative who can actually listen to you very well and help you reframe that situation in a more positive way, this is so helpful. Absolutely.
In your experience, like working within the field of relationships, like, do you see infidelity coming up a lot? Because it's something which is talked about, people having affairs, infidelity, but the impact that can have on people's mental health, on the people around them, I would say it's huge. It's staggering.
It's staggering. And the problem is that many people, especially women, they fail to recover from it. They just lose trust basically forever. And they can't create a new relationship because they realize that, like, falsely realize that I failed my previous relationship, and the problem is with me because their self-esteem got so low, and they believe that if I go to the even if I try to create a new relationship, it will go sour again because the problem is with me, which is completely erroneous.
And I think it's fundamentally, and I know this is obvious to say, but it's unkind. Why? And I think this is the question when people get into, illicit relationships, affairs. The thought is not often about the other person, and actually what this could do to them. The fact of how deeply betraying, and I almost lost for words at how bad this can be for someone. And to damage that person's confidence and their self-esteem, and you are a person who is contributing to that, which is frankly, it's disgusting.
It is disgusting. Yeah, it is, like, in human terms, from the perspective of fairness, it is totally disgusting and totally unfair. And it goes back to what we talked about, ego. The person is just being egoistic, and they say, it's me. What's in it for me? How can what can I do to get more pleasure from life?
And the thing is, I suppose from your perspective, how can we change as a society to reduce the incidences of infidelity? And therefore, is it better matching? Is it people a bit more self-awareness from people, or is it just everyone dissolving their damn egos?
Yeah, the last one. Just raising the consciousness of the entire society. That's the answer. And let's say, like, a practical tip is to meditate every day.
What would you meditate on?
It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's the practice itself that's important, because it helps you clear up your mind, helps you to just get more patient, to be more understanding. And, you know, experiments and all kinds of research shows that even if you say something, just one word that's like meaningless, like onion, and you keep repeating onion, 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 it works just as well as if you're listening or repeating a very, very like complicated mantra. So it doesn't matter.
It's about the repetition. It's about the same pitch, and it's about having that process where you're able to slowly relax that mind.
Yeah, you relax it, your level of stress goes down, and then you're able to make more conscious choices throughout the day. And let's say if like an opportunity comes up for you to cheat on your partner, and then you meditated that day, you might make the right choice.
Yeah, and I hope more people will make those choices. Roman, thank you so much for a fascinating and insightful conversation. I love how we've gone from your own personal experience and how you've emerged as someone who is, it seems, very, very well informed in the topic of relationships.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you for listening so well, and thank you for your insightful question. And I think you mentioned your daughter, so you're married, right?
I am, yeah.
Wow, yeah. So let me appreciate you for that, and that's
and for people out there listening as well, it's I'm sure you would agree with this, Roman. Like, marriage is something that doesn't just happen once and then you forget about it. You work on it every day, and especially during lockdown, when you're in the house 24/7 with kids, your relationship is, it can get strained. But put it when the kids go to bed, put it at the front of your mind and nurture that relationship. And like you said, show that unconditional love, because it's very easy not to. It's very easy to be exhausted and go into your separate rooms and watch different Netflix shows. But just try, cook a little dinner, have a little chat, and hopefully things will as soon as we emerge from lockdown, things will be much easier.
Yes. And I appreciate you so much for realizing this. This is just beautiful. This is music to my ears.
I think it took one lockdown to get there. Now we're in our second lockdown. I think we're much better at it.
Yes.
Awesome, Roman. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone listening. You can subscribe to us on most major podcast platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search for Sidekick Community or Sidekick Stories and we'll pop up. And please do give us a rating if you like this show. And do check out our free Sidekick app for iPhone and iPad. It's a collection of interactive exercises, tools and tips to help you boost your mental well-being. The app enables you to build a personalized well-being toolkit to help you deal with life ups and downs. Just go to our website, www.sidekick.org.uk, and click the download now button in the header to take you to the App Store. Roman, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Matt.